I can vividly recall the moment when I thought my life had crumbled. Though it wasn't as dramatic as one might imagine, there were no loud arguments, just a few sharp, icy exchanges delivered with surgical precision, cutting through the facade of normalcy we had maintained. I found myself in a bustling meeting room in Berlin, surrounded by colleagues, all eyes on me as I presented a significant deal that could secure my business's future. My heart raced not only from the weight of the presentation, but also from the unexpected intrusion of my phone ringing in my pocket. Initially, I hesitated to answer, the instinct for professionalism battling with something deeper, something that felt like an impending storm. Yet, something compelled me, perhaps an intuition I couldn't quite name, and I excused myself in the room, stepping aside to take the call. On the other end was Mary, my wife, whose voice, typically warm and reassuring, now sounded clipped and distant, as if filtered through layers of ice. Her words initially washed over me, their meaning lost in the chaos of my thoughts. "I'm leaving you," she said, the statement hanging in the air like a thunderclap. My stomach tightened, and I blinked, forcing myself to absorb the impact of her declaration. She continued, reciting a prepared statement that felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced this moment in front of a mirror. "I've sold the house and the car. Don't bother coming back. I'm pregnant, and it's Mark's child." Each word struck me like a blow, dismantling the life I had built over 7 years of marriage, brick by brick. Surprisingly, I didn't feel the expected rush of anger, hurt, or shame. Instead, a profound numbness enveloped me. My emotions struggled to keep pace with the cold logic racing through my mind. "Okay," I said, my voice calm, almost attached. I sensed her breath catch on the other end. She had anticipated tears, rage, or perhaps a desperate plea for reconciliation. But instead, she encountered a wall of cold indifference. Not because I didn't care, but perhaps because I was still processing the shock of her betrayal. The silence stretched uncomfortably as she waited for a reaction. "Okay," she repeated, her irritation creeping into her tone. "Okay," I confirmed, then ended the call, slipping the phone back into my pocket as I returned to meeting, seamlessly finishing my presentation as if nothing had happened. My colleagues remained blissfully unaware that my marriage had just ended. Honestly, I wasn't prepared to confront it either. I operated on autopilot, my mind focused on the task at hand, until I reached my hotel room. Sitting by the window, I stared at the Berlin skyline, my thoughts a chaotic swirl. We had been trying for a baby. Since when? And who exactly was Mark? Questions raced through my mind, each one more pressing than the last, until the anger surfaced. But it wasn't a loud explosion. Rather, it was a cold, calculated fury simmering beneath the surface. I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to work, the click of the keys grounding me in the present. Mary thought she could catch me off guard. She had no idea who she was dealing with. My first call was to my lawyer, Andrew. "I need you to stop the sale of my house immediately," I instructed, my voice steady. His tone sharpened with concern. "What's going on?" I explained the situation, detailing Mary's betrayal, her hurried decisions, and the implications of her actions. A brief silence followed as Andrew assessed the legal ramifications. "We'll freeze all transactions on the house deed right now. If the car is still leased in your name, she can't sell it without your consent." Relief washed over me at his words. "Good. I'll take care of the rest," I replied, feeling a sense of control returning. Next, I reached out to my financial advisor, Lisa. "Freeze all joint accounts," I commanded, and she confirmed it would be done without hesitation. That was why I had hired her. With the logistics in place, I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. The shock lingered just beneath the surface, but a stronger feeling emerged. Resolve. Mary thought she could destroy me, believing her betrayal would leave me in ruins. She had underestimated me. For years, I had spent my time outmaneuvering rivals and closing deals that others deemed impossible. While she had emotionally blindsided me, she had unwittingly declared war in a game she didn't even realize she was playing. Reacting would mean giving her control, and I refused to do that. Instead, I waited, planned, and when the time was right, I would strike. As the days passed, Mary attempted to contact a real estate agent about the halted house sale, but was met with refusal. Her frantic calls to withdraw funds were ignored, and her attempts to reach Mark went unanswered. The best part was her frantic attempts to reach me, each message more desperate than the last, echoing the silence I had chosen. I don't know what's going on, but we need to chat. Please call me back, Michael. I'm pleading with you. Michael, I really need your assistance. You can't ignore me. I let them all go to voicemail, relishing the chaos she was entangled in. When David uncovered the truth about Mark's escape plan, he began to retreat. That revelation was the last straw. He informed me that it appeared Mark had been transferring funds from Mary's account to a different account under a false name. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. Do you know where he's headed? I asked, my curiosity piqued. South America, David stated, showing me authentic passport records. I nodded, knowing that Mark would get what was coming to him. When he eventually vanished, Mary would be left alone, impoverished, pregnant, and trapped in a house that had once seemed ideal, now reduced to a shattered facade. A fleeting pang of sympathy threatened to surface, but I quickly pushed it aside. In reality, Mary's downfall was no accident. It was a result of her own choices, greed, and betrayal. I simply stood back and allowed her to self-destruct, watching as the pieces of her carefully constructed life crumbled around her. As the plane touched down, going home felt surreal. I wasn't merely returning to the place I had left weeks earlier. I was walking onto a battlefield. Yet the conflict had ended before it even began. I had won, and Mary remained blissfully unaware. I controlled my emotions as the flight attendants made their final announcements, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. The players were in position. The stage was set. All that remained was the final act. Upon entering the terminal, I spotted Mary standing by the baggage claim. She looked as though she hadn't slept in days, her clothes wrinkled, hair disheveled, and her expression one of utter despair. A look that comes only when one realizes her world is crumbling. I paused to let the image sink in. I didn't have to ask why she was there. She wasn't waiting for me out of love or regret. She had reached out in desperation. As she approached, her shaking hands clutched my arm, eyes wild with a mix of terror and fury. What happened? What did you do? She demanded, her voice a frantic whisper. I tilted my head slightly, letting a moment of silence hang in the air. Gone, the accounts, the house, the car. What did I do? I repeated, my tone icy. Everything went according to plan. Her mouth fell open in shock, and for a rare moment, silence enveloped us, her expression revealing the gravity of her situation. You ruined everything. The bank, the property sale. You halted the sale and froze the accounts. Why would you do this to me? Keeping my voice steady, I faced her directly. Because you lied, plotted, and tried to ruin me, Mary. You assumed I would simply roll over and let you take it all. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a near whisper. But I'm not a fool. I've been playing this game longer than you. Tears welled in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed the woman I once loved, but it was too late. I made a mistake, Mark. I wasn't thinking clearly, she stammered, desperation etching her features. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism dripping from my words. Is that what you're telling yourself now? She nodded frantically, her plea for forgiveness palpable. Michael promised me things, but now that he's gone, I see how foolish I was. I let out a bitter chuckle, the sound foreign to my ears. Please, just give me another chance, she begged, her voice trembling. You didn't make a mistake, Mary. You made a conscious choice. You betrayed me, sold our house, drained our bank accounts, had an affair, and now you want me back. Her wince at my words was a small satisfaction. I warned you once, Mary. I told you not to underestimate me. You ignored me, and now you're paying for it. In a moment of desperation, she fell to her knees in the middle of the airport, tears streaming down her face. I have nothing left, she sobbed, her vulnerability laid bare. For a brief second, I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it was fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the weight of her betrayal. You need me, I said, crouching to meet her gaze, our eyes locked a moment that felt suspended in time. When you sold our house out from under me and called to say you were leaving, where was that feeling? And when you lied about being pregnant with someone else's child, my voice was firm, unyielding. You made your choices, Mary. Now you have to live with them. I stood up, picked up my luggage, and turned away as she called after me in a frantic voice, Michael, please don't leave me like this. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of our history pulling at me, then glanced back over my shoulder. Mary, you left me first, I said, walking out of the terminal and leaving her amidst the ruins of her own making. As I made my way home, the journey felt peaceful, a sense of contentment and resolution washing over me. This was not about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Mary had tried to break me, but in the end, all she had done was make me stronger, and I was ready to embrace my new reality.